welcome to today's episode of Blue Collar American. I'm Aaron, and I'm here with my co-host Paul.
How's everybody doing?
Thanks for joining us today. Well, before we get started, why don't we do our little beer review? I have brought something
very special
that I
today.
had found in the refrigerators over at Tap and Fill, and I was actually pretty excited to see this because when I was a younger man, half the age I am now, I found this brand called Samuel Smith's, but I was introduced to their oatmeal stout. But then when I saw the nut brown, I immediately bought one. So I actually bought one this week and drank it here at home yesterday.
And the nut browns are generally my favorite beers out there.
Absolutely.
So
that's exactly
I'm super excited.
Why I wanted to share that with you today. So let's crack it open and I'll share a little bit of details about it, what the bottle says right there.
Okay.
And I've got one bottle for you and a bottle for me because we made the mistake last week of trying to share a can and there was not nearly enough.
All right.
So this is a product of England. So this is a very old brewery. And I'll read the side of the bottle here in just one moment. Highly recommend this beer for anyone who is a big fan of brown ales in general. It's got a really nice color to it. Can somewhat see through it. It's got a nice bubble head there.
Yeah.
Brewed in the oldest brewery, Tadcaster. Established in 1758 is what it says on the side. Brewed at Samuel Smith's small traditional British brewery with well water, the original well sunk in 1758.
Wow.
Is still in use. The best barley malt, yeast, and aromatic British hops. Nut brown ale is relatively dry with a rich reddish brown color and an inviting nutty flavor derived exclusively from a generous amount of roasted barley. And here's a quote. Samuel Smith has the richest, maltiest, and nuttiest of the brown ales. And that is a person named Michael Jackson. I doubt that it's the pop star. I doubt that highly.
Should we get up and do the moonwalk?
No, thank you.
It smells good. It smells really good. I love it. I'm excited.
So, highly recommend this. If you see this ever in your grocery store, go ahead and pick it up. And I picked it up at my local tap room at Tap and Fill for $7 for that bottle. So it's a good deal.
Do they have more of them over there?
Yeah, there's still several.
Nice. So they must have somebody they can order it from. Well, cheers.
Oh, yeah, that's the good stuff right there.
That's the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's the stuff dreams are made of right there.
So I'll have the links in the show notes.
That's very, very good.
For their website and the tasting notes from them, as I did in the last podcast. For our other beer, I put the exact tasting notes that their website had on there. And what I was looking at when I was reviewing and editing our video and then pulling up last week's beer, all the things we talked about were exactly the tasting notes.
Is that right?
So it's kind of fun to not have cheated and looked at them before our show, but then going to fill it all out in the show notes and that's exactly what we just said. So
yeah, for sure.
Very nutty, earthy. It's got a comforting, warm feel to it.
I really like it. Yeah, so the excuse me, the one that I found from South Africa was at the place in Bertram's Brewery up in Salmon, which is recently reopened apparently. That recipe is a South African recipe, and this one's an English recipe. So it's really neat for me to compare the two of those together. And then of course we've had the Rogue they've got a nut brown, and there's more nut browns coming out, which is really exciting to me.
It is exciting, which is also interesting to me that I'm really enjoying all these nutty beers because I do not like nut flavors in my coffee. So
I don't either.
They infuse like hazelnut and macadamia nut and all these things in coffee roasts and or in creamers, and I'm just not a fan.
I'm kind of a wimp that way too. I mean, you know me. when it comes to stouts and darks, and there's not a whole lot of them that I like. I'm more of an IPA guy. But so like when they came out, what's the one I don't know if you'll remember it or not, but there was a coffee stout that was out that had some kind of nutty flavor in it, like a hazelnutty flavor in it or something.
Yeah, what was that?
And I
one?
can't remember what it was, but I wasn't a fan of that. Neither one of us actually were a fan of
No,
that
it
because
wasn't
we
anything
talked about that, and if it has that, like we don't like hazelnut creamer in our coffee.
No.
And so when they put it in the coffee stout, it only made sense you and I didn't like that one either because
Right.
it had that heavy hazelnut taste in it, but
Exactly.
and coffee.
So I do like coffee in my beers.
Yeah.
I don't like beer in my coffee.
Yeah.
I like whiskey in my coffee. One of these days, once we get moving on, maybe we'll do a little whiskey tasting too. But
Yeah.
that's kind of fun, and we can make that go down the road. But
I've got some NA stuff too that I want to try too that I'd like to introduce to everybody because I'd love to see it to get some traction. Mm-hmm. It's kind of specialty stuff.
The non-alcoholic beer market has actually grown quite drastically in the last several years.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it has something to do with that. What is it? The dry January.
I don't know. I think there's a growing movement for it. They're calling it a health conscious movement because alcohol in your system is really, I mean, it's not good if you do it too often. All things moderation, including moderation.
Absolutely.
And so I mean, I think there's and of course Americans as a fellow American, we take that as to be we need to go way overboard and just completely eliminate everything that has to do with anything. And so I think that's what's happened a lot with the NA market too, is you've kind of got your one sector of people that have decided that for whatever reason it's not good for you. And it's not. If you look at the process, the way the liver breaks it down, it basically turns it into formaldehyde in our system for a minute, until we get rid of it. And if you do that too often, formaldehyde, of course, is, not good to have in your system.
No.
So I think people take that to an extreme. They forget the fact that our bodies have actually evolved a little bit because alcohol's been with us for so long. Our bodies have actually evolved to process that quite efficiently. And so if you're careful with it and you're responsible with it, there's nothing wrong with it. But I think that's the reason the NA market's grown. People are just taking it overboard and totally it's the elimination diet, the elimination, drinks, the elimination everything. And so,
well, it's nice too when there's something that tastes really good, like a beer, to have as a beverage, but it's not non-alcoholic. I mean, I tried doing the dry January thing, not as a movement, but because literally there was some health things that I was concerned about. And I wanted to, kind of like what the Whole30 diet is you eliminate everything and then you introduce certain things back in. And, I enjoy the flavor profile of beer and the crafting of it. And so it's hard to just cut the flavor profile out of your mouth,
Correct,
and out of just the hangout time. So
I think that's the important thing.
There's also
is
the
us being
social
social.
element.
I mean, and I think they call it social drinking for a reason. It's a real thing, and it can make the crossover, but anyway, yeah. So that's a major aspect.
And so it's just really good that there are so many different breweries are coming out with their versions of an NA beer, and then there's the ciders and seltzers and all those kinds of things that aren't just sparkling water or just apple juice, but they've got all these different flavor profiles. There's even non-alcoholic kombuchas.
Well, what you introduced me to was the hop water.
Yeah.
And I wasn't crazy about just plain hop water, but what I found and what I was thinking about, and this will be for a future show, is they've got Earl Grey tea brewed with hop water. So it's by Hop Tonic. I don't know if you ever heard of them, and I think I brought a can that one night.
You did once, yeah.
And so that's what I absolutely love this stuff, but I would love to see it get some traction and get some more get some more following, so it didn't cost $6 a can. It'd be nice to be able to actually enjoy it every once in a while without breaking the budget. So that's the other thing, but it's called Hop Tonic. It's an Earl Grey tea that's brewed with hop water, and it's fantastic. And they also do green tea that's brewed with hop water, and it's fantastic as well. So right in line with, for all our English friends out there, have your tea.
Yeah.
And it's NA, and it's a nice sparkling
It was
hoppy
quite
drink.
delightful of a taste, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, so do you like it so far?
It's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. No complaints at all. It's slightly I can't figure. I'm trying to put my finger on what it is. You're so much better at describing beers than I am. I usually leave that to you. But the South African version versus this one, the South African version, it seems to be just a little bit sweeter of a hit than this one. But other than that, this is fantastic. It's really good.
It probably also depends on the nut that they're using. So I don't know what nut they're specifically trying to emulate here with those malts and the roasting process. But I mean, even the one that you're referring to from Bertram's in Salmon, Idaho, is specifically a hazelnut.
Hazelnut, yeah.
And so that even gives a very specific flavor profile.
It does.
Psychologically, even if there isn't any hazelnut in it, but the flavor profile that
I'll bet that's what this
invokes,
is. I'll bet this is hazelnut too.
It very well could be.
Yeah.
Could
Yep.
be. I mean, that seems like a logical thing for a beer, is a hazelnut.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, well, I really enjoy it. I'm super happy you found them, and I'm glad they have more. And obviously, they know where to order them. So
Yes.
that's even good, better, best.
Speaking with our mutual friend Sarah, who has been running the shop for the last week while the owners, are away on vacation, and she's been going through organizing and making sure that inventory is up to date in the refrigerators. And I was sitting over there yesterday because we were talking about something else, and I looked over to the fridge and I'm like, is that a Samuel Smith's over there? And she's like, yeah, it's been in there for forever. And I'm like, I've never seen it in there. It probably was just tucked behind other things.
Well, she was going through that, wasn't she, and reorganizing
She
everything.
was reorganizing specifically.
I bet that thing's thing's a treasure trove of stuff.
Oh, there's some amazing things in there. I mean, I found this, and this isn't even, a luxury beer, but there's some really high-end beers and sours and ales and stouts and IPAs, and some of these barrel-aged things are all in there in bottles. And it's sort of one of the things that we as tenders for the other 40 beers on tap, we don't pay as much attention to those fridges unless somebody is specifically looking for something, and then we kind of come over. But we haven't been educated on what the owners stocked in there,
Right.
So it's nice when she comes along and is like, this is too maniacal for me. I'm going to put some order to this, and then pulls out the things that are very outdated and puts things back into the front that needed to be in the front, and catch your eye on something. And yeah, there's one or two more that I've got my eyes on that I'd
That's
like
the
to...
way it always works, isn't it? You see something, it's like, I got to try that.
Yeah,
So.
exactly.
Next thing you know, you're on your lips walking out the door. No, I'm just kidding. No.
Yeah, no, that's why you take it home.
You take,
So
you
that
can
you
take
can
it easy, right?
Lay down in your bed if you went a little tiny bit overboard. We don't like to go overboard here, but
No.
like to really enjoy the
It's
craft of it.
It may have accidentally happened a time or two, but it
happens.
But anyway.
All right, so what's good, Paul?
Yeah. Well, I read a book. I'm starting to read a book. It's pretty fantastic. It's about, and this is something I was talking to Aaron about before the show today. He's kind of like, what are we going to talk about? And I'm like, well, I think we ought to talk about being positive. And because everybody could use a little more positivity in their life, right? Mm-hmm. So the book that I've got on tap that I have started reading is called Be the One by Justin Morris, I believe. If you wouldn't mind looking that up real quick for me, Aaron, just to see, but I'm pretty sure that is the name of the book.
Justin Prince?
Justin Prince, sorry.
Okay.
Justin Prince, that's the one. Be the One by Justin Prince.
Mm-hmm. So tell us
fantastic book
about it.
Specifically the one what spoke to me about the book was chapter 8, and it's about positive thinking. I mean, when we say things like, I can't stand this, I can't stand that.
Yes.
It's so much different than when we say, what a great day. we're going to do this. We're going to get out and do that.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to make this happen. We're going to make that happen. If we focus our time, okay, so chapter 8, I'm going to get a little bit away here, okay?
No, it's good. Yeah.
Chapter 8 it goes into a story that's fantastic. So, and I can't remember what year it said it was. Sometime in the past, this gentleman that worked on refrigerated train cars was working on a refrigerated train car, and he accidentally trapped himself in the refrigerated train car and couldn't get out. And everybody was gone. There was nobody around. Well, he spent the whole night beating on the door. Yep, that's the one.
This is the one. I'll put this in the show notes. This is Be the One by Justin Prince.
Yep. Yeah, fantastic book. But anyway, so this guy got trapped inside this refrigerated train car, and he couldn't get out. And he beat on the door all night long to no avail. Nobody was around. Nobody was coming to rescue him. And sure enough, the workers showed up the next day, and they found his body in the train car. Well, he had a pen on him, and he was scratching out notes on the floor as he was laying there. And he's like getting colder. And then he wrote something else, thinking about my family, whatever, thinking about something else. And then his very last words that he wrote on the floor was, I'm not going to make it. Or I can't remember the exact words. You got to read chapter 8. I'm not going to make it. These are my last words. And so, sure enough, they were his last words. And as it turned out, there was something wrong with the refrigeration system on the car. And it was 55, 60 degrees inside the car. He didn't freeze to death. His brain, he was so out of his mind, scared and anxious and clawing at the walls in there all night long that he killed himself with his own thoughts.
Oh my goodness.
And it's an actual medical condition. And I couldn't help but relate that to my own situation that I have going on in my life for various reasons that you and I have talked about. Mind over matter.
Yeah.
And so it just spoke to me. It's really powerful. It's about the whole book's about positive thinking and not being negative. And that story just illustrates how powerful our minds are. You and I have talked a lot about this. Yep. With your situation. You've been fairly unhappy with certain things about
yep.
where we're at, and we've talked a lot about that. It made me think about you, because I can't help but think that no matter where we're at in life, physically or mentally or age or anything, if we got this thing moving right, we can move right. We can be positive. We can be happy. We can make things happen. We can do better. We can do better for other people, do better for our families, better for ourselves. And as a man, as a man and a leader of my own family and my kids and everything else, it really spoke to me. So I wanted to bring that up today.
Yeah, absolutely. Does Justin give practical ways to not just give the anecdote or the story of somebody whose mind brought them down, but practical ways of exercise for how to practice changing your mindset about things and be more positive about all that? I did happen to see on his website, before I looked at the Amazon actual book itself, is he actually has motivational events that people can get tickets to go to him. So I'm assuming the answer is yes, but I want to hear from you as to how you've been reading through that book and how he's practically applying that.
The answer is yes, he does. He has the motivational stuff, and that's one of the ways that he recommends people do it, is to go to these motivational events, become a part of these motivational events. It's a lot about who you hang around with. If you hang around with the drab and dreary, you're going to become drab and dreary. If you hang around with the negative and, or happy, it's the same thing with happy. If you hang out with the happy, you're going to become happy. You basically become who you hang with. It's kind of like becoming what you eat,
You should know that there's even proverbs in the Bible, and also
he brings one of them up.
Cultural proverbs that say the same exact thing, that bad company corrupts good morals.
Yeah.
I've always used that to help in the same direction without having been a master speaker or anything like that when we're out in front of people. But you can flip that the exact opposite of bad company corrupting good morals means that the more positive or the good people that you hang out with, you're going to rise to them.
Correct.
As opposed to sinking to...
Or get left behind.
Or get left
And we have a
behind.
natural proclivity not to want to be left behind.
If you're a heel dragger,
Yeah.
stubborn in that. But
Right.
if you're going into a specific life situation where you're intentionally wanting to surround yourself with older, wiser, more positive, happy kinds of people, the ones that care about other people, then that's going to rub off on you just as much as somebody who's a negative Nancy, as we call them, or
Absolutely
somebody who
correct,
always
yeah.
feels like they've got to point out all the problems and everything.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I thought it was so powerful. And it's funny that you mentioned the Proverbs in the Bible. He actually he references a proverb in the Bible, and of course I'm not going to be able to remember that now, but it talks about, you know, how the mouth I can't remember how it put, how the mouth and speaking can cause death, or you know, and I can't remember, but it's in chapter 8 there. And it's really, it just spoke. The chapter 8 is specifically really spoke to me.
Sure.
Of course, there's a lot more to the book than that, but I think the moral of the whole thing is we've got to get more positive.
Yeah.
I mean, if our leaders were more positive, and you know, who we hung out with was more positive, and we became more positive, there's just really nothing bad that can come of that. I mean, it's just, you know,
Yeah,
we can make mountains move when we actually move together.
I agree with that. And in a society that is so ready to be jumping all over all the problems instead of I mean, here's a case in point. You go open a newspaper.
Yeah.
Yes, traditional newspaper. What?
I haven't actually opened one of those myself for a while.
But this is the anecdote. What are the stories that make the headlines?
It's always negative.
It's negative stuff.
Well, and one of the things chapter 8 talks about that I didn't mention here too, and how it actually started, was our brains are naturally hardwired to look for the negative,
Oh,
to
yes.
go to the negative, because I believe the story that it used in the chapter is that when we were cavemen and we rolled the stone away from the front of our cave houses,
right.
we didn't go out and stretch our arms out and look at the sunrise and say, "Oh, how beautiful!" or look at those beautiful mountains, you know, that right in front. No, we didn't do that. We peeked out of our little hole and we looked for the nearest saber-toothed tiger, or we looked to see what the weather was going to be. Was it big black gray clouds on the horizon we needed to get ready for? We looked for the negative, because that's survival. That's how we survive, is by seeking out the negative and reacting to it. And how we react to what we see or what we find is dependent on our survival. So now that we don't have to do that as much anymore, that old hardwiring, you know, my son Jonathan calls it the reptile brain. the old reptile brain, but he calls it the reptile brain.
Well, I find that interesting too, that just even when I was trying to look it up right here real quick, I just did a quick search in the Bible. You know, Proverbs 4 came up, and it wasn't specifically about the mouth, the same one you're talking to, but to the concept that we're referring to here is Proverbs 4, chapter 4, verses 14 through 16, we'll say. It says, "Do not enter the path of the wicked, and do not walk in the way of the evil. Avoid it. Do not go onto it. For they cannot sleep unless they have done wrong. They are robbed of sleep unless they have made someone else stumble. For they eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. But the path of the righteous is like the light of dawn, which shines brighter and brighter until full day. The way of wickedness is like deep darkness. They do not know over what they stumble." So the point there is, you hang out with people that want to be in the darkness, you're going to be in the darkness.
Walk like a duck.
Yeah, walk like a duck, talk like a duck, it must be a duck.
Yeah.
You can be physically in darkness and trip and hurt yourself, or your thoughts will be dark. There's so many different applications to this. But anything that is of righteousness, anything that is of good, anything that is of uplifting is generally represented by light. And how when even
It's out in the
just
open for all to see.
speaking,
Yeah.
yes, even speaking about light, you can't help but change the tone of your voice and your body posture when talking about, but the light of the dawn.
Yeah.
Everyone knows what that's like when the sun cracks over the horizon for the first time in the morning, how enjoyable that is, unless you're just that dark of a person that you would cower away from all of that.
And there's even mornings where somebody could ask me, Paul, what did you see when you went outside? And I wouldn't know what the weather was like, or I wouldn't have seen whether or not the sun was shining.
I'm such a creature that's very much directed by the weather around me.
Yeah.
And I never thought that was going to be the case. In California, where it's sunny almost all the time, even in a beach city, it would only be foggy or overcast because of the temperature change at the ocean, and it would like be steaming. So that would be like the fog, but it would come in and then would go away. But having a sunny environment all the time, you don't think anything about it.
Do you ever, sorry, just a little bit of a squirrel, do you ever miss the smell
Oh, absolutely.
of the ocean?
I miss a lot of smells right now because my nose isn't functioning since
yeah.
2 years ago.
Sure.
A certain biohazard weapon was inflicted upon the population of all of us.
Right.
And I was victim to it.
Yeah. As
And
was I.
I pray about it every single day. Yes, we talked about that last
Yeah.
episode and how you think that may have had
At least some
effect
impact.
on
Yeah,
your heart.
for sure.
It affected my entire olfactory. I don't have everything back. I don't have all of my sense of smell. I have only partial.
Right.
And of that, some of those things are actually incorrect. I smell some things, but they're not the way they've been my entire life. And some tastes as well. But yes, the smell is a big thing for me.
Yeah.
But I used to say, I want to move to Oregon because I want it to rain all the time.
Yeah.
And I love the rain. But I realize now, as I've moved away and the older I've gotten, that I was craving something that was non-existent in Southern California. We were in a drought for the longest time, and so
Yeah.
rain was not common. So I was craving
Yep.
watering of the earth and,
Yep.
but think about what rain does to you when you are craving it. And it's been sunny all summer, and all of a sudden you have a really nice rainy day. What does that immediately invoke in your brain? Oh, it's cozy. I want to curl up. I want to hunker down, because you don't just go out and hang out in the wet snow, wet rain. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And so that emotionally brings you quieter. It
Yep.
brings you darker, cuddly,
Yeah.
versus if it was dark outside all the time. Like I've never been, but I really would love to go to Alaska, but I can only imagine what those people deal with when they have 24-hour days during the middle of winter, where the sun never comes up. It's black.
Yep. Yeah, I can't even imagine
for
that.
months at a time.
I can't even imagine that.
I used to think I could imagine that, but now that we live here in Idaho and there is weather, there's really only 2 seasons, because spring's just like that and fall's just like that. So it's summer and winter.
That's pretty much
and it's
exactly right.
it's on the doorstep, about to happen here, coming up to. I don't even think we're gonna have a white Thanksgiving.
I know. I don't think so either. I'm really thinking the El Nino must be really strong this year.
I think it's gonna be wet and cold. That's what's gonna happen. It's not necessarily white.
Wet and chilly.
Yep.
Kind of a wet and chilly.
But when you realize that when it's snowy days for a really long period of time, it's overcast all the time, people start to just
become
their
melancholy.
mood becomes really dark.
Yeah.
And some would say that's depression.
Yeah.
So having said all that, and then we're only talking weather, what about a whole group of people around you that are sour?
Yeah.
That are people that are judgmental.
I've got one person in mind right now that just is above all others, but I won't mention any names just in case this gets around to it.
The longer you hang out with that person, the more you feel kind of
just
stressed out and tense.
Yeah.
And then you start doing that when you leave their presence.
It's a physical reaction. Yeah.
You kind of snap out of it and you're like, man, I don't like being sour.
Yeah.
I don't like being
it's no bueno.
upset.
No good. Yeah.
Versus, how many times have you been around somebody that's just not on the extreme, but the bubbly personality that, and that can be male or female. It's not meant to be anything of any sexist drive. But somebody who's very positive, very uplifting, always asking how you are, always knowing, remembers everything that you got going on, you you feel important to that person.
You do.
You feel
Yeah.
like,
Yep.
wow.
That's how my
And
partner
then
operates.
and you start
And
thinking,
he's
you know what? Why
yeah.
why am I not doing this to other people?
Yeah. 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 Yep, that's how my partner operates. Well, you know, and he's good at it. I
That's
mean,
good.
really good. He's actually very genuine too. I mean, it's very, you know, that's the nice thing. I mean, it's if you can be genuine, it's even better, right?
Right.
But anyway,
Well, I didn't
yeah.
mean to steal the show there by
No, no.
expanding on that, but it seems to me
I
that
think it all ties in. It really does. But that's kind of the premise of the whole book is that it's just, I mean, thinking positive and whether or not you like where you're at in life or what you're doing or who you're with or any of that, if you start thinking more positive, it's gonna be better in the long run for everybody involved. You know, most importantly yourself.
and then it affects how you think about real life stuff too.
Yeah, it surely does. I gotta say, since this is starting to get warming up a little bit,
Uh-huh.
this is taking on different notes for
Even
me.
better. You
Yeah.
like it?
I do, and the smells are it's smelling different now that it's breathing a little bit. I mean, this is really good.
So be the one. The front cover says the universal roadmap to create, design, and live an unforgettable life.
Yeah,
That's interesting. Trying to read some of the
it's
notes
a
about it.
self help thing, you know. I mean, it's and generally, honestly, I'm not generally into that kind of stuff. I'm just not like this whole idea of that book I just read that I recommended to you the other day
Mm-hmm.
is another one. They're both just two really good books that have been recommended to me recently. This one was recommended to me by my partner. The one that I recommended to you was recommended to me by my other partner. And so, you know, it's they're I mean, they're both really good. They're both really good. The one that I recommended to you the other day, Melissa actually knows the author or knew the author. He died of heart failure.
Oh.
And so, you know, so yeah, and she was actually very good friends with him and his wife. And he's written several books, and he was at the top of his game with Disney and then Fox. And then, I mean, just, you know, talk about somebody that has one of those dream careers. But,
Wow, yeah.
but Aaron, he'd go home at night and he'd hit the booze.
Wow.
He'd clear out a half gallon of vodka in a 24-hour period
That's sad.
because he was so unhappy.
Right.
And the person I'm talking about with this book is his name was David Hollis, and he left all that behind, and he and his wife started the Hollis Company, and it was basically motivational coaching and you know it's all living your best life now stuff when it comes to
Sure.
motivational stuff. But these guys were really good at it, really inspirational to a lot of people. She was very inspirational to a lot of women. He was very inspirational to a lot of men, and you know, and he was one of those guys that was from California, and you know, he'd never been hunting, he'd never been fishing, he'd never been. Yeah, that's the guy.
This is the book,
Yeah.
Get Out of Your Own Way by David Hollis. I'll put this in the show notes. I believe that we made mention of this 2 or 3 podcasts ago, actually. So I'll put this in the show notes again as well.
Yeah, and that one is from my better half, Melissa. She's really into all this stuff, and she's met a lot of these people actually. I was surprised she didn't know the author, Justin Prince. Thank you. But she didn't. So
Yeah,
she's met a lot of them.
Dave Hollis's first opening paragraph to the summary on Amazon says, "The idea that you could be more, but got in your own way, should wake you up in the middle of the night." David Hollis used to think that "quote unquote" personal growth was just for broken people, but then he woke up.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
And I'm not kidding you, Aaron. I really think that's a good one for you. I don't know if you've gotten into it yet or not. It's a fantastic book for you, I promise, because he comes from California, and so it made me think of my best friend. I mean, that from California, and and there's a lot of stuff in there that he says that I know you'll relate to.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
No, I haven't gotten into it. I haven't really spent a lot of time doing any personal reading right now, except for my time privately with the Lord in the mornings. But
And I personally think that should change. I'm issuing a challenge to
I need to.
my friend right now.
My life has been filled with stressing out about making a living for my family.
Yes. Yes. You've had some external
And
stressors.
That's
for
an
sure.
outside stress, and that changed a little bit today. So some good news
Yes, it did.
on that front. Sadly, my day job is still hurting financially, and we have yet to be paid from 2 weeks ago.
Really?
So tomorrow will be 2 weeks. Sadly, there just is no money in the coffers. But I met some people that work at the INL, Idaho National Laboratory, several years ago, and it's been a long process of not just applying, but trying to work for contractors that work at the site, and just never really getting anywhere until this past year. And this is nearly 5 years in the making, actually. Yeah. Some groundbreaking opportunities were presented to me by some people, and I was able to apply and went through a large interview, an hour long, with a panel at the beginning of October, and then just had an interview with the director of the specific agency. So I had this second interview with the director of that agency on this past week on Tuesday. So I just received a phone call from the very first, one of the very first people in that panel interview. Got a phone call today saying, I've got an offer for you. And HR will send you the full offer, but I just wanted to tell you that. So
That's wonderful.
that relieves a great deal of stress. All the details still have to be worked out, as all the onboarding and all the things, the background checks and all that, because it's a national laboratory.
Yeah, and I can
So
tell
it may be the beginning of the year that I'll be officially on.
And I can tell there's some emotion there when you tell me about that. And I've felt that same type of emotion when I've had life-changing things happen to me. And that's when you get word I mean, nothing's first of all, nothing's under. I mean, we don't have controls. I believe control's a fallacy. I mean, that's all in God's hands.
Yes.
But when you get word that something that's pretty darn secure is entering your life, and it's going to change it in ways that you haven't felt in many years, that's an emotional thing. It really is. And so I can't begin to tell you. I mean, I
don't even know how to process these emotions right now, to be honest with you.
I know it. Yeah, and this is something that I've talked a lot about, and got a lot of people praying about this, and have been praying about this, and so it's so nice to see. It's so nice to see God's work come to fruition. It really
I agree.
is. Yeah.
And the other part of the relieving factor there is it's right around the same rate of pay as what I'm supposed to be receiving from my job as well. But the security of knowing that.
Oh, did they give you? Did they tell you what the
told
offer?
Me a number, yeah.
It's great.
It's close enough, and but the fact that they don't bounce checks, they don't miss payments, they don't. It's a $1 billion facility, multi-billion-dollar facility, and it's government backed, and then there's full benefits.
Yeah. Yep.
There's full benefits, not just for myself, but for my family, and there's. It's just a relief.
Yeah. And the nice thing is, it's there as long as you want it.
Yeah.
And that's the other nice thing.
I mean, this one is specifically a year contract for the position, but even on the phone, she's like, yeah, because I was like, is there any wiggle space with negotiation? She's like, well, I do, I have all these programs for periodical performance checks and bonuses or little perks, and specifically the annual review and this and that and the other. And I'm like, oh, that's really amazing. Thank you. Because that's something that I haven't had in the last 2 years. I'm still at the same rate, and nothing's been reviewed in over 2 years. But then I caught her in her own words. I was like, so that is assuming that I'm beyond a 1 year thing, because what you're saying is this 1 year is not predicated on me. It's predicated on the budget that the site has for this specific brand new position that they created. And I've got an immediate team built in, and we'll all three be learning the exact same thing at the same time because they hired my competition. So
Yeah, right.
I'm not going to be threatened by that. I'm going to be incredibly enthused by that, because I get to learn something new from somebody else who is competing for the same position I has. That means they have a whole nother perspective on something that I don't have.
And having grown up here my whole life and seeing people go in and out the doors of the INL my whole life of 50 years now, I can tell you beyond the shadow of a doubt that getting that foot in the door of an organization that's within the government like that out there that's pivotal. That's key. Mm-hmm. I've seen time and time again. I've seen people get their foot in the door with either janitorial or sites. In fact, we have our common friend that got his foot in the door that way, didn't he, or something? Didn't Charlie get his foot in the door that way?
Sort of.
I thought
he's military though, ex-military.
Ex-military is different.
Everything like that gets in there. I do know.
No, he was telling me about somebody that got their foot in the door.
Yes.
Janitorially.
Yes.
And now they're all the way up there. In fact,
I think it was an assistant director of some kind. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, but my point being, once you get that foot in the door, it's a whole different world. So.
And I take what you're saying.
You just have to promise me that you won't change. You'll still be my friend. You won't forget the little guys.
No, the road that has brought me thus far has also said, don't ever change who you are. That is what is good and right and true.
I was a little tongue in cheek.
I get it.
But because I've seen a lot of my friends, childhood friends, I don't talk to anymore. So,
yep, it's a character thing.
Yeah.
You just need to hold on true to what you know and you believe. And and I think that's really what was the biggest deciding factor for them, if I may project about the things that I've said to them, is that, pardon me, that's not supposed to come through. The element of I've gotten to where I've gotten on my own 2 feet, but I can only get so far. There's a ceiling to that, and it's not very high up here. It's when you're on your own steam, you only have so much power.
Right.
You need opportunities to learn, to grow, and to partner to be able to move further up in life. And I fully recognize that in my own life right now, that I'm running out of gas trying to get there on my own power. This to me is that opportunity. And I said straight up to them, I'm looking to grow, to learn, and to live up to a challenge. I don't know everything about what this specific job has for me and what I'll be doing every single day. And that's the part that I'm kind of excited about, because if it was just what I've been doing for the last 20 years, I probably wouldn't be super interested in it. Because I've been there, done that, and could write a book about it. You know what I mean? I want to try something new, and I want to be good at that, and let that teach me how to get better at that for a long period of time. And it's not a direct path either. It can be rather wide. I mean, this could be, as you said, the foot in the door, so to speak. This could be an opportunity to go learn something new, go back to school, go get a certificate, go travel the world.
Correct.
Or just sit in an office and be happy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd rather not sit in an office all day long.
No, I doubt you will. I'm sure this'll lead. I know you, and I think you'll take it and run with it. And ultimately, the decision making is up to you. You know. But again, going back to the 2 books that we've recommended on this podcast so far, just keep there. It's pretty easy, and I think you run into this out there. It's pretty easy for people to become pretty negative with where they're at.
Yeah. So
just remember that.
there's an application right there. There is an environment, and I know what you're talking about
Because
because I've come across some of those people.
you've told me this before too. Because I've had some good fortune too in the since we've known each other.
Yeah.
And you've told me, just be careful. Because when you get that good fortune, when things happen to you over and over again, good, and you've got something worth having, we can, for some reason, we our brains, we take it for granted.
Yeah.
Like
it becomes like as if it's secure.
right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think that's a real problem we've got to try and overcome.
Mm-hmm.
And I've remembered you've said that before, and so that's my only recommendation to anybody that
That's good.
gets awarded the news that says, hey, you're going to be, as long as you show up and you have a heartbeat and you get things going, basically. There's an old joke about the lab. I think I've told you. It used to be, the old joke used to be, it's $1,000 a week to play hide and seek, but now it's got to be, it's $5,000 a week to play hide and seek, because times have changed and money's changed, and with inflation and everything else, $1,000 a week wouldn't be much anymore.
No.
But in the old days, $1,000 a week to play hide and seek, yeah, I'm in. But there's something to that saying, it's like when you're afforded these comforts of knowing that you're taken care of, if you can show up and get this work done, it becomes monotonous, and it's a kind of a humdrum thing.
The exciting thing about what I was learning in the 30-minute interview that I had with the director was that I don't think there's going to be anything stale or stagnant about this, because the whole job is specifically to it's a communications liaison title.
Yeah.
It is the team of us working with these other team leads to tell the story.
Yeah.
And so in order to tell a story, you've got to go interview everyone.
And what they're working on out there, let's face it, it's going to change the world.
Change the world. And that's what they want to share is that this cutting edge technology that is safe, that is secure, and yet has a reputation of negativity.
Sure.
They want to tell that story.
Paul Harvey said it the best. He's like, hey, if we were introduced to the electricity via the electric chair, we probably wouldn't have electricity right now. And so we were introduced to, nuclear technology via the bomb. And so there's a real negative connotation on that. And then the things that stick out in people's mind, like Chernobyl and, 3 Mile Island. And now we've got the situation going on with Japan with Fukushima. Mm-hmm. But they're not, okay, so when people concentrate, that's, again, going to the negative.
Exactly.
We're focusing on those things, which are the most negative thing we can, never mind all the cancer we've cured with nuclear technology. Never mind all the power we've produced and the people's lives that we've enriched with nuclear technology. Mm-hmm. Never mind the fact that all of these problems that we've had with it, per se, like Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, Fukushima, are not going to be there in the future because the reactors they're building now are completely different, and you're not going to have the accidents that you have with heavy water reactors.
Well, they're not dumping a bunch of nuclear charged waste just into the ground.
Here's an interesting thing, Aaron. If you look at the waste that's produced from coal operations to produce power over the last 100 years, how much waste would you think that would produce? Hundreds and thousands and millions of metric tons of waste. Mm-hmm. But then you look at everything from start to finish around the entire globe, and that's just, by the way, in one state with coal. But then if you look at, and these are facts that just growing up here, I've learned from my buddies. If you look at since nuclear anything began, and I'm talking from the bomb to electricity production to medical production, all of the waste since all of it began throughout the entire earth that humans have touched it, all the waste it's produced would fit in one football stadium. Now, what to do with that waste is a whole different ball game. But I guess what I'm saying is it's a much smaller scale than people can even possibly realize. And once we get it under control, and that's what we're doing, it's going to be absolutely it's going to be a moment in human history that's forever remembered in the history books.
I agree.
And Ron's working on that. That's one of the things he said that night at the concert that really stuck in my head. He said, I come from someplace back east. I can't remember.
Ohio
Somewhere. He says, "Yeah, I came here and people always remember me for cornhole because I introduced cornhole to this town."
Yeah.
He said, "Never mind the experimental, breeder reactors I'm working on that's going to change the course of human history." He's quite the guy. He's a nice guy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, he's a locomotive, man. He goes.
Goes after it.
Um,
Speaking of going after it, yeah.
He's exciting me because of a situation that he had to deal with during a congressional hearing where he was challenged to tell the story of his organization, which is MFC, Materials and Fuels Complex. And I was super impressed even during that 30-minute interview, all the things he was showing me, all these booklets and pamphlets that he's got that they've made themselves about policies and procedures and organizational structure that I kind of go giddy over.
Yeah.
I can't write it all myself, but to be a part of something where they already have processes in place and yet nobody knows it, that's where I'm coming in, is to tell people about how great this is, not just as this technology, but also how great this organization is.
Yeah.
And
once they learn your worth, and once they learn that you can actually do that stuff too, oh man.
Well, that's
the cool thing.
That's what I told him in the interview too. Is like, I'm excited to just go learn who all these people are. He's like, yeah, I expect you going and interviewing and meeting with everyone in the organization. We have 170 plus people that work at just MFC.
I can tell he wants his story to get out.
He wants his story told.
I think you're a great catalyst for that.
I'm excited to hear about these other two people because for him to say, Aaron, you're going to be hired to do this story, and then to say that all three of the final contestants, whatever they're called, whatever we are.
On The Price is Right.
On The Price is Right! all three of us are being hired.
Yeah.
So that's exciting to me because now that means they've had the same passion as I've had, and they've conveyed that to Ron, that he now believes in all three of us to tell his story. Yeah. So I'm going to spin this as positive as I possibly can. Is like, no, I don't know who any of those two people are. I don't care. Mm-hmm. I'm excited to be a part of a brand new team that gets to go learn something brand new and then tell the world about it.
Yeah,
because the one statement that he said was, "We're a world-class organization, and the world just doesn't know."
That's exactly right. That's what he was trying to convey to me that day. And I was thinking in my head, I'll never forget it. I'm like, then you need to hire Aaron because he'll help you do it. So
I have a lot to learn.
I'm excited for you.
But I'm excited to learn it.
I'm excited for you here in the land of Nineveh.
You're a funny guy. It is a desert.
We will tell that story someday as well. So, but anyway.
Well,
guess on that note,
we can part this little video adventure for this week. But we talked about a lot of really good stuff. Talked about a really good beer. Talked about some really good books.
On that note, you got to tell me what you think of it now that it's aged a little bit with some air.
as you said, it's warming up and it's coming more full-bodied, more round.
Yeah.
I've always said about red ales that if red had a flavor,
it smells different. I know you can't smell it, but it smells even stronger.
If red had a flavor, a red ale is the embodiment of what red would taste like. And so a nut ale, to me, like as it opens up, there are so many other nuances that happen. And the same is true with most anything from an ale all the way to a stout.
Yeah, that's a great point.
They open up, and your olfactory is, your mouth is, your taste is part of your olfactory. And so when you can smell and see as well as what you're tasting, good things happen.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. That's a good way to end this great beer. And now that I know where it's at, I might have to grab a couple for the old fridge.
Yeah. I've just bought 3 of them out of their fridge because I had one last night, one right now, and gave you another one. So
there you go.
I think there's 3 or 4 in there right now.
We still have, the next show would be great to follow up with that nut. We have another can of that nut brown ale that I brought over too.
We do.
It'd be nice to compare. That's by Rogue, or no? That's not by Rogue.
No,
That's
the
by
Rogue is the Dead and Dead that we still have. Yours, the other one is the
have to look at it.
Shoot, I don't remember, but we did highlight it on the show before. Yeah.
It'd be interesting to compare it side by side with this. So, okay, sir.
Yeah, well,
been a
thanks
pleasure.
for a great show. I actually do have to go work at Tap and Fill tonight. Got to pick up a shift because the owners are on vacation.
Well, maybe I'll stop by or something.
Yeah.
I got to run to Rexburg, so got to open a door.
Well, thank you guys for joining us in this episode of Blue Collar American. We're just average guys, just sit and talk about average things. And we hope that you're enjoying the journey alongside us, because the only reason why we're now publishing this information is because we've discovered that the things that we talk about, we figure
Everybody talks about,
you probably think about it, and or you know someone who's thought about it, and whether or not you've actually acted on talking about it, that's okay. When you watch our YouTube channel and you like, subscribe, and share, that's between you and yourself and what you watch. If you don't like what we've had to say, then guess what? You get to move on to the next one. But if you like what we've had to say and what we're continuing to say, we invite you to be a member of this little podcast, joining us on YouTube. We will eventually get on Rumble as well. I just haven't had the time to set up that account. But speaking of social media channels, we also just started today the Instagram account. So there's one post and it's just our logo. But that Instagram account, let me grab that note here, will be in the show notes as well. It's called Blue Collar American Show. So Instagram at Blue Collar American Show. In there, we will be posting shorts from the videos, but it will always have a link to the YouTube channel up in the description and bio. And there will be a great way to be able to direct message us if you can't figure out how to do that through YouTube. So Instagram will be a great place. We'll probably be posting not just our own content, but we'll probably reshare, repost reels and stories of things that we like, similar to the shared saved folder that we've got right now, where when we save something, it goes back and forth between the two of us. We'll probably post and repost some things that mean a lot to us that I think would be worth talking about in the future, or even just are relevant to things that we've already said before. Shared values, shared content, are the way that the social media thing goes round and round, is when we share each other's content. And again, to the community, when you do share it and when you do save things from any social media channel, here's a little lesson, not just for us, but also just the way that all of your social media channels algorithms work, is that they see engagement. So when you engage with us in our social media channels, that gives us more opportunity to be seen on said channels. So again, please like, share, and save, and follow us, subscribe to our channel, and
hit that little bell too, because that'll remind you when we have a new upload for you. So.
Yep, it sends the notifications right to you once I'm done uploading it right here. This is both recording studio and editing bay, and
right.
personal office and man cave, because I'll sit here and watch a TV show and sip on some whiskey myself sometimes. So.
Yep.
All right, thanks guys, appreciate you. Again, I'm Aaron, and this is my friend Paul.
Thanks everybody. It's nice chatting for you today. It's weird. It's one of those things, it's like you know your audience, but you don't know your audience. So.
You know them, but you don't know them.
Yeah.
All right, thanks again, guys.
Thanks, guys.